This video is proudly sponsored by DigimonCard.io for all your Digimon card, deck building, deck list, card pricing, and discussion needs.
Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and we are just 1 week away from the release of BT12 here in North America. And it's kind of snuck up on me a little bit. I haven't been able to do as much playtesting as I want to. We had the pre-release this upcoming weekend too, so because of that, this is more of a prediction-based tier list based on my thoughts going on into the meta, kind of what I've seen a little bit in the Japanese side and their deck list and everything. So that is kind of the tone for this video. I wouldn't expect this to be highly accurate, but more of just my thoughts going on into it. And then as we get tournament results, I'll be updating this based off that. And if you guys do want tournament results as well, make sure to check out my website. I've been updating it with a lot of tournaments from BT11, pretty much all the regionals across the world, as long as I have the deck list for it, and other events too, and as well as if you guys want it based on the archetype, have it on my website as well based there. So these are all obviously BT11s. We'll be updating with BT12 with the formal release of it as well in tournaments, but I think a really good resource. And pretty much we split up this video in 2 halves, so we have pretty much the new and kind of improved archetype, so any archetype that got a new buff kind of thing is in 1 half of this tier list, and then the other half are essentially existing archetypes. So most of the archetypes that did top in the last BT11 meta, we put on that chart as well. So that's the idea for it. And if you are new to my tier list videos, kind of how the tiers go are highly competitive, which means that I would expect it to win a regional event sometime during BT12. Competitive is where I would expect it to top most events, if not, and maybe get a win every once in a while, but mostly I would expect it to top most events. Highly playable is where I could see it get a top, but I wouldn't expect it every time. Playable is more of I would be surprised for it to get a top, but that's kind of not the idea. And the trash is just, if this gets a top, this is like a complete wrong for me. So that's kind of the idea for this one. So we're going to jump on in again with the new and kind of new support archetypes there, starting off with the Emperor Greymon, Red Hybrid kind of stuff. I'm kind of condensing some of these archetypes as well, just for brevity for this video. But we've obviously seen Red Hybrid do pretty well and get some occasional tops here, even in as recent as BT11 with it as well. And I know it's a different archetype and it's a different kind of play style for the deck for the new stuff, but I do feel in general that Hybrid is probably one of the most broken mechanics in this game. Is very strong of how much value you can get, and even it's been a year since BT7 has been released and that kind of idea, but the hybrids are still really good in this game in a lot of ways. And most of the time, like Blue Hybrid and Yellow Hybrid, most of the reason those aren't around as much anymore is because Bandai has intervened and with the restriction list and everything else. And so Red's never really had, I'd say, like a broken archetype. It's had a strong archetype in a lot of ways, but nothing too busted. And I think that the new line of support, the fact that you just have more cards that say Red Hybrid, I think is very strong for consistency and deck choices and stuff. So I think that the deck can be very strong. I wouldn't say it's highly competitive. I'm not sure if it could win a regionals, but I think it's definitely going to have a lot of people on it. I think a lot of people can top with it as well. So that is that's where I'm going to put that there. Gallantmon got like its whole new line. I'm not sure where I want to put Gallantmon. I think I'm going to put it in highly playable for now. There's just been a lot of times where like Gallantmon and like Jesmon, like both those decks, every time like people are like, oh, these are the new red aggro decks, they're going to do very well, and I really want to believe it. And I really do like Jesmon, and I do think like the EX3 package did very well for it. It did get a couple of tops in the BT11 kind of meta too, but I think Jesmon's okay. I do think it like helps the fact that you do get the mulligan helps this deck out a lot, but I don't think like the new support is kind of there for it quite yet. And just the fact, like, once you, like, if you lose your first stack, like, you have, like, usually still, like, no defense in the deck, and you're just really kind of destruction based, which I think is always, your opponent has to, like, set up for you be able to get, like, a max advantage for it. So I'm going to leave it highly playable. We'll see how that does there, but we're going to leave it there. Crossheart, I think I'm going to keep in competitive. It only gets, like, 1 new card, which is the secret rare, but the superior mode is really neat for what it is, and in general, Crossheart is just kind of a deck that plays the game itself kind of thing. You just kind of set up your tamers and you just kind of go from there. So I think the deck is still very sufficient for what it is. It's still a deck that I like, and I don't think there's like a lot of tamer disruption from BT12 to kind of warrant it to not kind of be there. So we're going to leave it there in competitive, and we're going to see how that goes. Imperiodramon, I think also is in a solid spot. We could pretty much have a new line from essentially both sides and a new top end for it. So it's an interesting playstyle. Honestly, I haven't been able to mess with it as much as I want to, especially since I do like the blue-green, especially like free trait stuff. So we'll probably talk about it a little bit more. But armor could also like benefit from some of the new packages and some of the new DNA devolutions as well. So I think there's honestly a lot there. I haven't been able to test it again as much as I want to, and I'm looking forward to seeing how deck lists look for this across the board here in North America. But I have some high hopes for this one too, and we're gonna leave it there. All Force is in like a tricky spot. It did get like some of tops in BT11, mostly after Black War Greymon X got limited to one, or sorry, the Greymon X got limited to one. I think highly playable. The only card you got is like the new X Antibody, which is a nice little Digivolve on top. The fact that like the archetype only had like one level 6, it was a really good level 6, but it was one that you didn't really have like a good replacement for it. So like being able to run like 2 of these is either being able to Digivolve on top of your All Force or being able to just Digivolve into it in case you don't see your All Forces. I think pretty strong there. But it's okay. This could maybe jump up to competitive. I'm going to put it here in highly playable. We'll see how that sits there. But I think the deck is still strong. It's cool, but again, it kind of has some issues. And then Shine Greymon, I'm putting this in highly playable as well. It's a deck that I've been kind of just a little bit having like I've been testing this one a little bit more, and like when I started testing it was really fun, and then it kind of like went down a little bit. So I don't know, it's a cool thing. We also get like support in it in the future too, so it pretty much has like a double new line to go into, and I think this is definitely a deck that I want to kind of keep my eyes on and see how it develops as we go on. It has some like unique mechanics, especially with Marcus being able to be a tamer that kind of turns into a Digimon that can attack with, which is really nice, and it's a really unique deck in a lot of ways. So I want to keep my eye on it, but I think highly playable is where it sits right now. We'll see if it gets any tops in the next couple of weeks. Next up we have War Greymon, and I'm going to put it as our first here in highly competitive. And honestly, it's just because I've seen a lot of builds with this deck, and it's such a strong archetype, and obviously it has so many different lines. Like it gets like you have like pretty much like the War Greymon and the Black War Greymon, but you get to pretty much take advantage of all those lines with how the deck works, and it's really just the top end that really differs, right? The fact that you pretty much have all your Agu Gray, Metal Greymon lines, that's still great. We've been seeing how strong it is here in North America, and so the only thing for it is obviously we do have like the Greymon X not being at more than 1 right now, which kind of stinks for the deck. But I think there's a lot of versatility with this, and you can obviously do like the X Antibody line as well if you want to. And I think it's one of my. I think it's going to be a really strong deck in a lot of ways. It's Agumon and Greymon are kind of like the poster child for Digimon, and so they're always releasing support for this deck. And there's honestly just a lot of cards in these lines that you can be really creative and kind of decide what you want from it. So we're going to leave that there. We're going to put it in highly competitive. And then we have Dark Nightmon, which I kind of like it. It really doesn't have support in the sense of it has like the Darkness Bagramon, which is like the new secret rare for it. It's really interesting, and honestly, you can be really kind of creative now with kind of like the Twilight and Bagra lines, which this is just something I'm putting here because I need to just research it more and try to do some kooky things with it. But I think there's something there for it. The fact that it does have Tamer Destruction in Archetype is really great in a lot of ways too, and it's just kind of really interesting. So we're going to leave that there. And then we have Machine Dramon. I'm going to put Machine Dramon all the way in highly competitive too. We'll see if that's a little bit too greedy for it. But we've been seeing Machine Dramon do pretty well here in North America. A lot of people are on it, especially like the Ultimate Cup. I think that kind of reinvigorated a lot of people for it. We got some new support in BT11 as well. And this X Antibody card is pretty stupid. It's being able to get like all the effects of like your things, being able to get passively one new source every turn, I think is very strong. And if your opponent would delete this Digimon, you get to trash their security. So that's all of that stuff's really good in a lot of ways. So obviously it's kind of tricky to get to. It's just the fact that you kind of have to play a Machine Dramon and then Digivolve this on top of afterwards. But if you're able to get that consistently, which again with mulligans you're able to probably do that a little bit more consistently in the first place, I think this is like a really big monster of a deck in a lot of ways. So I think this probably is a little bit too high, but I'm going to put in highly competitive. That's one of my more of a shot for what this meta is. I don't know, I've played against this deck. It's really obnoxious when they go off. I just feel like I can't do anything. So we're going to leave that there. Mervamon, it did get kind of like the Merva Jet Sylphie, not Jet Sylphie, but Merva Jet kind of mix match there. So I think it's neat. I think purple in general has been this deck has been kind of good as like a loop deck in the format as it is already. So I think that's something for the deck and as well. I don't think the new Digicross card is like super good for it, but I could be wrong there. It's just like another piece for it, and obviously like cross art can. Like again, like we're in this like kind of neat spot where there's a lot of support cards that are kind of open and flexible enough that a lot of decks can kind of use it outside of the kind of like intended one. So I think that's kind of neat there. But we're going to leave it there in competitive. And then we do have like the new Hunter archetype. We're going to put this kind of at the top. We're going to leave it there. So this is a really neat archetype. I'll probably make a video next week going over it because it is unique in its mechanics. It's kind of like Crossheart in a lot of ways too, with kind of how the mechanics work. But it's the fact that it's a multicolored card like deck is really interesting too. And there's just like a lot of I don't really have enough time in this tier list to kind of go over it in general. But I think it's understood that this deck is pretty strong going into this new meta. Again, it had a lot of kind of traits based off Crossheart, where instead of like where Crossheart you do on plays and with underneath tamers, you kind of do devolutions where you can get reductions with cards that you save underneath your tamers too. So you get a lot of mechanics from your tamers, but I don't think it's as dependent as like Crossheart is on your tamer. If you get a destruction on one of them, it's not as like mortifying as getting it on like a Crossheart. So but we'll go into that. We'll make a video next week going over the archetype in general. But I think I have high hopes for this deck. I think a lot of other people do, and it's very well. And then also talking about high hopes, this is our last one in the actual archetype. It's the Bilzamon X, just Bilzamon, but they have a whole new package of X, and you already just got the advanced star deck, and this deck is already meta in BT11, and so just being able to get this whole new fleshed out package, this deck is about to be really, really dumb in a lot of ways, which is fair. I think Bilzamon has been like not meta since release, so like for over a year it's just been kind of like a neat little deck that they haven't really fleshed out, and it's been fleshed out. It's going to be present. It's going to be a strong deck there in my opinion, so I don't think that's too crazy. And but in general I think this is kind of a good idea for how my feelings are going into this meta. Honestly, like purple and black really on top here, which is not usually the case for this game, so that's really interesting there. So those are the new and improved archetypes. Then we'll kind of go on into our existing archetypes. So Dorbikmon we're going to put here in competitive. It's I think it's still a really good deck. I think it's something that got a lot of benefits from the fact that mulligans exist. And again, if you're a deck that's not really ready for Dorbikmon to just go off, you just kind of lose in a lot of ways. So we're going to leave that there in competitive. I think it's a very strong deck in its own right. Jessamon, I'm going to put start off our playable thing. I kind of mentioned it before, like Jessamon has just always been like, oh, it's going to be the broken deck, and it just never is. It never is. So it's got like no new support from this new one, and we're just going to kind of leave it there. Blue Flare, I think, is in a good spot competitively. I honestly am very surprised how, honestly, in general, I could just be the one who's wrong, and that's fine. And I think that Blue Flare is a very, very strong deck that a lot of people just don't run. I've seen like stats where it's just like a dozen or so people play the deck, and I feel like the deck deserves more than that in a lot of ways. I think it's strong for what it is. I've seen it do well on at least like a local level, which I know is not the same as a regional competitive level, but it's I think it's a deck that can definitely top. It can definitely mess with a lot of other decks, the fact that it's kind of like a blue hybrid in a lot of ways, and I think that's good. And talking about blue hybrid, we're going to put it here in highly playable there. I think the deck is good in a lot of ways. I think it's we're going to put in playable. I have to change my mind. I think it's cool, neat. Again, like, play Blue Flare. I think Blue Flare is just a better version of it. We've seen a little bit of blue hybrid top, especially in like the last couple of weeks of BT11, which is neat. But I don't think I think maybe people will try it. I don't think it's there. And it obviously was the big boogeyman for a while, but there we are. Metal Guru X, we're going to put in highly playable. I think the deck is still viable in a lot of ways, and I think people will play it. And honestly, I think like the reason people like play it more than blue hybrid, which is why I think it has like traditionally a little bit more tops, after, especially after like the Greymon X being limited to 1, which I do think it was a big buff for this deck because I was kind of like the worst matchup for this deck across the board. So I think people will still be playing it, especially I know people in North America just love blue decks that win. So we can maybe see this bump up in a little bit, but we're going to leave it there. Armor, I love armor. We're going to leave it in highly playable. I think the deck is very strong for what it does, and I think it's in an okay spot. We do kind of like I like to play it in like the DNA version, so like kind of like halfway into Imperadramon. So this can kind of have some overlap with how Imperadramon's doing as well. We're going to leave it in highly playable, but that's my thoughts there. Security control. Oh, man, this might be blasphemous. I'm going to put it down to playable. I don't think it's been doing well. It's getting like the occasional top, but I don't think it's getting really any good support in the next set, and I don't think it's going to be doing anything new either. So I'm going to keep it playable. This is more maybe than a hope than necessarily than a prediction of just I don't like playing against security control. I think that's pretty that's not a unique take either, but we're going to kind of leave it there. Next up we have Grandis, and I think Grandis probably lives in highly play, but it technically got a little piece of support that we didn't go over. Got like a new Grand Kawagamon, which you can do your line. I don't think it's super good for the deck. I could be wrong for that, but it's okay for what it is. This might be, I don't know. It's BT9 was such a set. Like these two decks are just so good for such a long time that I think that it's really hard for these decks to be not playable in a lot of ways unless like something just strictly changes from the game. So these could easily jump up to competitive. This is again probably the same as security control, where it's a little bit of a wish that maybe they're not as relevant as they used to be, but we're gonna leave that there. Bloomlord I think actually is going to be in competitive. I think that it's strong for what it does in the way I think that Quartz is also a really good level 7 that this archetype can really take advantage of too, just the way that the deck works. You have to be careful like it, all the stuff that you have suspended too, but it's strong there and can lock your opponent out if implemented in this deck, so that is good there. Examon, I'm going to put in playable. We'll see if that's wrong or right. I've always underestimated this deck, and I'll say that. I'll say that outright. Like I've always thought like this is a deck that once you set up, there's a lot of decks that can't do anything about it, but setting up is really tricky, especially since I do think there's a lot of like a more aggressive fast decks that are going to be we've kind of been in the spot where there's like more like kind of tempo based decks where they just gain a lot of advantage, and even if they lose their first line, their second line is still just as strong. So I kind of leave Examon here. It does have some good matchups, but we're going to leave it there. Black War Gray X I think is still playable across the board, and then we're going to just kind of put these three here, unfortunately. Maybe this is being a little bit too mean to Mastamon, but I think these three just kind of haven't been, like, obviously Alphamon got its limited and restriction nerf. Buellstar I really like as a deck, but just the fact that it doesn't, like, it's kind of just like where security control for this meta is, just because you kind of don't have the setup you want from it and Mastamon. So I'm going to quickly rearrange the deck list and we'll go from there. And here are my final thoughts going on into this video. And real quick, because I know a lot of you guys just kind of skip to this part of this video and look at my final thoughts. So this is more prediction based. I'm okay with this being wrong. If you guys have thoughts of me either overestimating or underestimating something, please let me know in the comments. I'd like this to be more of a discussion and just your thoughts as well as a community going on into this format as well. So there's that. Again, highly competitive, as I would expect it to win. Regionals are kind of level event. Competitive, I would expect it to top. Highly playable, I can see it topping, and playable, it'd be I would not necessarily see it topping, and then kind of trash. It's just if this tops, I'm just completely wrong about these as well. So, and kind of maybe a little heavy-handed for some of these, but we're just going to go over it real quick. So I think all four of these, I think Beals X, I think that the new Hunter archetype, I think War Greymon, and also Machine Dramon. Machine Dramon might be like my personal choice for in this category, but I think all four of these are very strong. I don't think this is anything too crazy saying that these are probably four of the strongest decks, at least three of the strongest decks going into this archetype or into this meta. Even just these two for sure. If I didn't put these there, I know I'd start a witch hunt. So those two are very strong. I think the rest is a little bit maybe personal choice, but these are ones if you want to win. I think there's a good chance for you there. Competitive, I think Crossheart is pretty understood, and Puredramon has a lot of new tools. The red hybrid in general, which again is mostly the Emperor Gray. Merva, I think, is still in a good spot to get a little bit of new support. Bloomlord, I think, is strong too. The effect, I think it can really take advantage of Quartzmon at times too. Blue hybrid and Dorbic, which I think Dorbic is one of the strongest decks off of the Mulligan system to kind of exist. Highly playable. We do have our BT9 decks. These can probably move up to highly competitive. These are just, I've inputted so many of these 2 lists, and both these lists are always like 45 cards the same. It just feels like such a waste of time. So this is just me on a hope, like, oh, maybe they won't top, but they're probably going to top for these. Gallant, pretty much these knights here. So Gallant and All Force, I think, honestly, I'd probably put All Force a little bit ahead, but it is a strong deck. It got a little bit of support, and I think it got a lot from the Mulligan. We do have new Gallantmon stuff. I'm not incredibly impressed by it. Maybe I should be, but I'm not yet. We have Shine Gray, which I think is really neat. I think we're probably needing the new support in the later sets for it to be really good, but it's just kind of okay here. Black War Gray X, this could probably bump up to competitive as well here. I'm going to put it right here with the rest of his boys, but it's still a strong deck for what it is, especially since it can take advantage of some of the new Greymon cards if you want to from the War Gray, or from the War Gray package if you want. These 2 are just kind of my pet decks, honestly. They got kind of like sort of support with it, like this got like the Bagra army kind of line more a little bit, and then also armor, which you can use the new free stuff from Imperialdramon, especially like the DNA stuff. I think you can really take advantage of with this deck too. And then playable, we have security control, Jesmon, Blue Hybrid, and Examon. These might be a little bit hard. Honestly, like, I always feel bad putting anything below highly playable, so any of these might be a little bit harsh, but I have to choose some things that I'm just not impressed with going into these meta, and these are what these are. So honestly, like Mastamon, I really wish was good, but I've just never seen it top. Even with the new support from BT11, even with Greymon X, Black War Greymon X being a little bit nerfed, and the fact that it does benefit from mulligans, I just don't know if it's there or not. So I love this deck. I hope it tops, but I just haven't seen it yet. So hopefully I'm wrong on that one. But again, this is my breakdown here. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Again, let me know what I got right, what I got wrong, what you guys are looking forward to from this upcoming set, and good luck on your pre-releases this upcoming weekend as well. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.